Let's take a look at the reading from Hebrews. In the case of a will, it is necessary to prove the death of the one who made it, because a will is in force only when somebody has died. It never takes effect while the one who made it is living. This is why even the first covenant was not put into effect without blood. What is the first covenant? It was, according to this author, the agreement of trust between God and the Israelites as promulgated by Moses as the Israelites were making their way from Egypt into the promised land. It was the first official agreement with the people of God, the Israelites. And he explains what he means by how it was not put into effect without blood. When Moses had proclaimed every command of the law to all the people, he took the blood of calves together with water, scarlet wool, and branches of hyssop, and sprinkled the scroll and all the people. He said, "This is the blood of the covenant, which God has commanded you to keep." We have footnote B, and that tells you to look at Exodus 24:8. So if you wanted to, you could go back and look at Exodus 24:8 when Moses says this. Now, this will seem familiar to us. When do we hear something like this? This is the blood of the covenant, which God has commanded you to keep. Well, we hear that at Mass when the priest consecrates the wine. This is the blood of the new covenant. Also could be called the New Testament. That's why the Old Testament is called the Old Testament and the New Testament the New, is because testament is another word for covenant, which is another word for will. So this is all about the idea of a binding agreement. But what I wanted to point out is this. In the same way, he sprinkled with the blood both the tabernacle and everything used in its ceremonies. In fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Not only is he saying you can't have a covenant relationship without some sort of blood, he's saying there's no forgiveness without the shedding of blood. Now, again, I think it's tempting for us to pull back from this and to be a little bit freaked out that the Jews engaged in animal sacrifice and that Moses would do something like this, and that bloody sacrifice was part of pretty much all religion in the early days, even the Jewish religion. But there's another way to look at it, and I think that's what the blood signifies. If you are really going to be in an agreement, a relationship, a marriage, which is sort of what God and his people are in, it's a life and death question. It's not a question of mere contracts or legalese or lawyers. It's a question of being willing to live your whole life and die your whole death for this. That's what happens when you get married, till death do us part. The other thing is, when we sin, we tend to forget this because we can go to confession or we can pray to God and we can be forgiven. But there is no forgiveness without blood. I think symbolically that's a way of saying we always pay the price. There's always a consequence to what we do. And I think at its worst, the Christian faith is a kind of magical thinking. God snaps his fingers and we're forgiven, but that's not how it works. God could have done that and could always still do that. But that's not how it works. It goes through the cross and the sacrifice of Christ. It goes through his precious blood. In other words, Christ's blood shed on the cross is the blood of the new covenant, the New Testament, the new and everlasting covenant. So the next time you hear those words at Mass, they refer to this passage of Hebrews, at least obliquely. They refer to the whole theology and concept of sacrifice. Jordan Peterson talks about sacrifice, and he at least reminds us that you can't achieve anything without sacrifice. You sacrifice the present for the sake of the future. If you want to be an Olympic gymnast, You work hard every day until the Olympics. You sacrifice your free time, and no pain, no gain. We understand that even in the secular world. And no forgiveness without pain, without blood, without paying the price. So that our St. Paul elsewhere tells us, you were bought at a price, you are not your own. Our redemption isn't just all smiles. And isn't it great that God just decided to do it? The price he paid was torture, suffering, blood, and death. And it's the price we continue to pay when we sin somehow. Everything we do, good or bad, has a consequence. Blood flows through our veins at all time. There is no living without blood. But I think many modern devout Christians want to take the blood out of the faith and leave it a passionless experience, both passion in the sense of emotions and passion in the sense of the passion or suffering of Christ. So think about this verse a bit. I'm not going to talk about some of the other things. The reading in Samuel is interesting because it's about how God sees in a way that men don't. We're touching on there's a lot going on in the Gospels, but we can talk about that stuff in class. But I did think that this reading from Hebrews in particular needed to be unpacked a bit, and that keep that in your mind, especially at Mass. There is no forgiveness without blood. That's why the Eucharist is central to what we do and who we are.